A lot of perspectives today, and this is why I'm here. I'm an engineer, and if you go to a lot of symposiums, there's not a lot of perspectives, and engineering symposiums are the worst. So I'm Mark Reiner. I'm the director of resilient infrastructure at Jacobs Engineering, very large engineering firm. And I bring that up because that perspective, what drives an engineering firm, is new infrastructure built for government agencies and utilities. My focus has always been, at least the last 2 decades, on existing infrastructure, aging, and for communities. And they hired me anyhow. So I'm going to start with a quote. And this is part of what I bring into my perspective into work every day is we can't impose logic and make it happen. We have to understand how people make it, and it's not. So I'll read it. So there's no logic that can be superimposed on the city. People make it, and it's to them, not the buildings, that we must fit our plans. But I want to change it out because buildings, think of who the stakeholders are for buildings. Somebody owns a building, and then people choose to live or work there. So it's a limited, one building doesn't mean all the buildings. If you separate out buildings and put in utilities, and you say, who are the stakeholders of water? Who are the stakeholders of energy? Then it broadens the conversation. So this is like you saw me up here fumbling the formatting, you'll see. So that road is closed. We must make our plans for utilities. Has anybody ever seen a road close? It's a joke, right? Because that doesn't say a water main or gas main or whatever. The road is closed. That's all the information you need to know. It's a disruption to your commute. It's a disruption to your business if you're on that block. It's a big deal. So these are all messed up. I'm just going to read it. You can't see it, but in New York City, the roads are cut open 550 times per day.
Wow.
Yeah, right? When we cut into asphalt, because we bury all of our infrastructure, we introduce water into the asphalt. And in northern climates, even Denver, a lot of potholes. 20,000 are patched every January in Toronto. Huge part of the budget that could be going elsewhere. Despite robust asset management, very smart engineers, we still have 720 water main breaks per day. Right? I'm getting a lot of woes. I like it. That's all right. And just because of that, if you live in the city, I know Jessica's the closest here, but or no, you're the closest. But we've just become inured to disruptions.
I have a lot on my street right now. So.
Exactly. You will see spray paint. I call them urban hieroglyphics of where all of our infrastructure is. You can paint a mural on the street, and then the utility comes by and paints it. And like, here's my 2-inch gas line. But we just become inured to disruptions. And how are we being impacted by that? So this is, I hope the audio will work on this one. This happened in February 9th in Philadelphia.
Right now on NBC 10 News at 5, a massive water main break leaves a local neighborhood underwater. Police and firefighters went door to door, checking on people after a river of water rushed over streets and sidewalks and flooded homes. And take a look. This isn't just impacting a few homes. An entire neighborhood is now trying to clean up from the destruction caused by all this water.
Okay, so 16 schools were closed. Look at all the houses flooded. One water main break. Now, this is the video that I'm going to I couldn't get the audio working, so I'm going to imitate what he's saying, but you can see. So first of all, FEMA does hazard mitigation, makes every local government do hazard mitigation planning, but aging infrastructure is not a hazard. So what is being said right here is the reporter's asking, well, he's with the water department. Why did you let this disaster happen? The reporter called it disaster. His response was, we're in line. This is our KPIs, our key performance indicators. We have 25 water main breaks per 100 miles of pipe in Philadelphia. We need to get the most out of it. Oh. So here's an entire neighborhood, 16 schools closed, and they've met their key performance indicators, okay? So his focus is on that one spot. So like I said, a building is a address, but a sector is a regional, national issue. So his focus is on that one spot. They're going to patch it up, and they're responsible for the direct costs of doing that. So here's the community response. Here's the response of somebody who was impacted.
Our basement is, funny. I don't even know, messing with the foundation of the house. I'm very concerned.
So these are short videos, but her perspective was not on the water main break, right? Her perspective was on her asset. So what we are missing in America in planning, I'm an engineer, but I've been talking to Planning Association for a long time because we are not dealing with the quantification of aging infrastructure. So what Steve brought up in his video was that utilities are charged with their direct costs because of indemnification. The total cost of that failure in Philadelphia will be millions and millions and millions of dollars, and the water department would be responsible for about 1% of that. All this is going to be eaten up into the pockets of the homeowners, et cetera. There's some, like Denver Water has some good neighbor stuff, that the Berkeley water main incident, but they're not going to pay for everything. So this aging infrastructure is impacting communities, and you can see where they're at. So this is a group of ours in Jacobs where I work that ran this for me. And what you're looking at is that little star. Yep. So yeah, that's as far as I go on that. But that star is where that water main break occurred at 56 in Springfield in the King Sessing neighborhood of Philadelphia. So it's a point location. And what you're looking at is a 3D representation of traffic from cell phones, okay? So this is a traffic, and look what happens after the water main break. And what that is showing is like, okay, the water main broke, so we have to go around it, right? So that's just traffic, but that is a loss of business in the area. You can't get to local businesses. People that work at the local business are losing hourly wages. So this is a ripple effect across all sectors and the community. And I like this because if you look at it as kind of the warp and weft of a fabric, we weave our infrastructure into the communities. So you can't just say a water main break is a point thing. It's a perspective from the community. No, it's not. So this is my other silly cartoon, but this is actually one of the most important slides. So that's a water main break. Sorry, it's a water main. On the left, it's a date it's installed. On the right, it's the date it's going to be repaired or replaced, so it's a timeline. And this is the utilities' view of our assets under our cities. They're looking one way. How much more life can I get out of it? What is the remaining useful life or economic value of that asset? And their calculus is based on that direct cost. What do I have to pay for if it fails? And that goes into probability of failure, consequence of failure. What we're saying, what I've been saying for on trial, is we need a city perspective that quantifies how do we look at all these disruptions. The 550 road cuts per day in New York City, what are the social costs of failed infrastructure, and how do we start keeping track of these, our own KPIs, key performance indicators, to talk about infrastructure from a community level. So in a nutshell, this is going to be, it's hard to see, but this is kind of my perspective on an integration of system of systems in a city. The gray slabs are the horizontal infrastructure distributive under our streets. They connect up to our buildings. If those are working, a city can develop essential services from food supply, emergency, fire and law, banking and finance. If you can take out a mortgage, you can build a house, send kids to school, access health, and hopefully you have good governance, your social services. What I want to point out, though, is that 100% of our food, fuel, materials come from outside a city, right? There's urban gardening, I know, so don't get mad. But I mean, really less, 99.99% of our food, fuel, materials come from outside the city. So you have to consider the regional infrastructure, and you also have to consider the climate change impacts on that. So climate change is impacting a large portion of, well, the entire world, but most of our resources come from outside the city. So we also have to expand our view of that. So with that, and we look at it through a local lens, a national lens, and what is being worked on right now is a social lens to tie in social vulnerabilities. And I worked with New York University on a LAMP methodology for doing that. But I'm going to end it there. Oh, there's another one.
Keep going, Mark.
This is, I promise, last one. That regional infrastructure starts to tie in the conversations. How do you talk about decarbonization unless you understand your supply and your demand? How do you talk about reliability unless you understand your transmission and distribution? Because a copper wire could care less if it's a fossil fuel electron or a renewable electron, so that there's different footprints of resiliency and sustainability for each of these transitions. So I hope that frames some of the conversations today.